Another draft physics video, science. Anyway, Pyrrho, another snarky video, and so I'll play some of it. I sped it up a little bit, but I did watch the first 2 or 3 minutes here. I mean, well, the first 8 minutes, but the first, I'm going to start 5 minutes in. It takes them a while to get going. So we're back on the double slit, and so he puts as his icon through this whole 2-hour video this, or 3 hours, this diagram, as if this represents something. And he doesn't explain any of this, doesn't point to any of the math that demonstrates that this is the way it's traditionally done. But the idea is this is the single slit pattern, and the double slit will fit inside of it. Now that's only for specific, you have to have exactly specific dimensions for this to work out, because it's a little bit complicated, because the real pattern with the splits wide is obviously got a lot more bars in it. I'll show you that. But again, this is the single slit with a wide opening, lots of bars, not this. So this is what they're representing, a very narrow slit with very little happening. So they completely avoid this width in this experiment, for obvious reasons, because that would be a very complicated framework to have the double slit pattern trapped inside of. Trapping the double slit inside of this, trapping this inside of this, it seems a bit nightmarish even. But none of the math will ever represent this. So anyway, this is the true double slit pattern with wide openings. There's lots of stuff and the dead spot. So the difference between the single slit and the double slit, single slit has a double maxima, so it has a double bright spot in the middle, double thickness. Double slit has double darks, okay, in these locations. And obviously it has this somewhat bulgy thing that doesn't happen with the single slit. Alright, the other feature to recognize is, as I mentioned before, traditionally this math was developed when they used a light source that went through an aperture. So essentially they had a light bulb, you know, red light, doesn't matter, they used monochromatic light. Oh, this pen is dead. Put it in the dead pile. Shit happens, as they say. Ugh. Okay. Sorry, a little bit of a delay. Okay, so you have a light source emitting light, and the idea was you put first the light through a little tiny aperture to essentially cone the light, and it was the coned light that went to the slits. So this light obviously had intensity variations, and laser beams don't have that. It's coherent light, so it's basically even in its distribution, where the traditional math was done with light that wasn't even. So the very fact that they don't even account for that at all, like, that doesn't make a difference when it makes an obvious difference. And one of the obvious differences you can see is that if you look at modern double slit experiments or single slit experiments, you'll see these bars are very bar-y. Okay, they have a real you know, it's almost like all on, all off, on off, on off, on off. I mean, they're sharp, okay, in terms of they have not perfect edges, but they have edges, okay. And technically, what the math says, what his silly drawing says, is that what this should look like, okay, is that you'd have an intensity, okay, that would gradate to the dead spot, and then gradate to the brightness again. So it would be like this is what it, so it should have a hourglass look to it. So do we have any of that? It should have like this kind of a, obviously I'm not drawing a perfect sine wave, but their math says it's a sine wave. There's no sine wave if you look at the modern pattern. It's bars. And so how could their math be correct if it's basically their math is saying there's a 15%, let's say right here, there's a 15% wavelength deviation. There should be photons here. Okay, only 15% of what there are here, but they should be here, and they're not here. Just another point to make that I haven't made in the past, but it seems the wave theory again is suspicious. So anyway, he just has this icon. It has no math going with it, no references, no links. You can read what he has here, but there's no example of showing how the math does any of this. So I'll show you 2 quick pages. I mean, I did a Google search, just grabbed the 3 of the top results. So this video is just awful. Okay, this obnoxious guy. I'll play a little bit of it.
So let's talk about the double slit experiment. This is an extremely important experiment.
Yeah, you annoying asshole. So anyway, again, it confirms wave theory. He said proves. The whole thing, look at this pattern. Is it anything like this? No. Does it anything even like Pyrrho's? Is there a sign that the math he's going to do is going to have the bulge and then the weak and then the bulge and the weak, the bulge, the on-off, the single slit framework? Is there any sign of it in here? No. So here's this most perfect math ever did, and this isn't what the real pattern looks like. He's not doing this. This is how he drew it. Is this that? Is this? See that? Is that this? And is that a sine wave? Is that a gets brighter and then gets dimmer and then gets brighter and then gets dimmer? Doesn't look like it to me. Alright, now here's a more scientific page. Here's the view of it, right? So now that looks pretty much like what I drew, right? I mean, that. Yeah, that's it. Look at the math. Huh. Not a single sign of any of this. None of this. None of this. None of this. Where is it? No intensity changes. Just a sine wave. That's their math. The most perfect math in the history of mankind. Here, most perfect math ever. You see anything happening there? You see any of this character in this math? No. I argue for a reason. Yes, because it's all bullshit. There's a tiny relationship between the similarity of the on-off pattern of the double slit experiment or the single slit experiment and water waves with 2 slits, right? Water waves with 1 slit doesn't look anything like any of this shit. So it has absolutely nothing to do with water waves going through a single opening, has nothing in common with light going through a single opening or electrons going through a single opening. Nothing in common whatsoever. Alright, so let's, of course Pyrrho will ignore this argument. He won't have any explanation. He'll say nothing. He'll just do this. He'll post his superficial propaganda images. Abraham Lincoln eating a watermelon. That's all this is. This is just propaganda. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't say anything. Yeah, and he'll say he's made an argument. Why don't you do the math, Pyrrho?
It's like, yeah, but I'm right. Well, then everybody that thinks they're right can go ahead and be egotistical.
Yeah, it's true. The point is who will be proven right, okay? I'm just saying that there's a sort of strength to arguments and an integrity. I'm here to debate anybody. I'll respond to videos if people make them. The difference between me and Ken is Ken's a coward, okay? He's been politely asked for a debate. I even said I'll accept any rules. I won't swear. You can have a moderator who will kick me if I say one derogatory thing about your big fat ass. Okay? Whatever the rules you want to make. I just want the opportunity to challenge your arguments. And he won't accept the challenge because he has testicles that are smaller than quanta. is a ballless cunt. I'm not a ballless cunt, so I have a right to be fucking arrogant because I'll shove it right back up your ass. And you're full of shit, jackass. Alright? You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And this is the depth of your argument. This silly, vacuous propaganda. I've done the research. You won't find the math. You won't find this math being done at MIT. You won't find it being done at Yale. You won't find it being done at Stanford. So you go ahead and show it to me. You won't find it being done on the Khan Academy. He doesn't do the math right. He does the math for, yeah, sine wave. Is this a sine wave? No, it's not.
No, just okay, not acting too bright. And these are the brightest people.
So yeah, he's saying we're not too bright. Okay, so now I'm thrown in the category. I'm aggressively arguing with Ken, yet now I'm one of him. So I've argued about this before. There's no way to win, right? As soon as you're against the church, you're a communist, right? Anybody's anti-American, you're a communist or a fascist. You're Hitler or you're Stalin. Fuck you. I'm neither. Fuck you.
You know, and the bright lights in Washington, D.C. aren't any better because they're using their intelligence to predate on other people that work.
So then he changes the subject, typical Pyrrho maneuver.
Work harder. So, bullshit. Okay.
Funny stuff's coming, trust me.
So, another thing I was going to say is I've seen that Theoria fake science thing and Gary's fake science. And
okay, so he calls it fake science, right? So if you make a challenge and you demonstrate, you show how there's, like Dr. Quantum, there's these 6 million views for videos that totally misrepresent the truth, misrepresent history. The whole story of the Young experiment, again, if you go look at the original Young experiment, you can barely even see any of the diffraction because it was done with sunlight. Okay, and so it basically just looks like a bunch of little round balls that are blending into each other a little bit. I mean, it's a terrible pattern. And it's in the context of Newton's rings. I wonder if I can duplicate it here. I mean, I did find this is kind of interesting. I was fucking with a laser and you know, I took out the center of it. Yeah, let's see if you can see this. It's pretty oh yeah, you can see it. It's kind of, so I mean, that's Newton's ring. So Newton was seeing that 300 years ago. Alright, now so just cut that. Just cut a horizontal slit through there anywhere. And you'll see that that's the on-off pattern right there. Now do we see a blending, like a degrade, and it goes down and then it goes back bright and it goes down and it goes back bright? Now we see that it's really hard lines between dark and bright, dark and bright. Really hard lines. No sine wave, no get dimmer and dimmer and dimmer and then get brighter and brighter and brighter. None of that crap happening.
Both of these guys say that the single slit and double slit patterns are the same.
Okay, that's not what I say, and I've been quite clear about what I said. I've drawn pictures of it over and over again. I'm saying it's caused by the same thing, and those words will come out of Professor Lewin of MIT's mouth. He will tell you, okay, using the word diffraction for the single slit is stupid because it's obviously an interference pattern, and he's a Huygens believer in, so of course it's interference because that's the whole point of Huygens, is to create interference, you idiot. So it's an interference pattern, and that's the argument, and you can look at it right the fuck here. The only difference, once again, is that this maxima is twice the size, and it's I didn't draw it proportional. The intensity is a little higher. But the point is, with lasers, it actually isn't that perceptibly different. This doesn't look like 90%. See, the argument people will make is that the central maxima in the single slit is 90%, and this is 4%. That's what they actually say. 4%. 4% for these side ones. Okay, you won't see that in the wide slit. There's no 4%, 4%, 4%. No, there's no 90% in the middle. Okay, it's a little brighter in the middle, and then it's a little less bright, less bright, less bright. Okay, here in the double slit, the difference is there's the double dead spots. Okay, but otherwise, the patterns are fundamentally the same. If you just took this part out here, it would look just like this part here. They're caused by the same phenomenon is the point, Pyro.
And of course, they're not the same. And Gary just doesn't really. This is a really.
Of
slow
course,
thing.
again, of course they're not the same. Again, how is this a fundamental difference? How is it a fundamentally different physical process that's causing this pattern? They both have everything in common. They both have barness to them. They both have proportionality to the distances. The shapes of the dark spaces are all the same. So how the fuck are they fundamentally different?
Here's the deal. If you just do the slit experiment with something that behaves wave-like, like light, when you have...
That behaves wave-like. So again, you see the built-in the prejudice here. Something that behaves Jesus-like. We can only talk about theories that have somebody who's Jesus-like in them. You know, I'm arguing his premise, and yet he's insisting on his premise is already, he's saying something that behaves wave-like or looks wave-like. Well, I'm saying to you, light has never looked like a wave to me in my entire life. Ever. Did I ever think of light being anything but a ray that comes off of something? I always thought of light bulbs as having rays coming off of them. Rays, straight rays of light. Not waves of light, rays of light.
A lot of light. It acts, you know, that's how a prism works. There's a lot of reasons.
Okay, that's how a prism works. So again, the same phenomena. We're talking about diffraction now. And he says, that's a wave. And I insist that it's a wave. And you can't possibly explain that either as being some kind of diffraction, like somehow electrons move in a position, and that position, the amount of distance they move is consistent or something. You can't make some sort of geometric argument that electrons are required to move at a 22-degree angle or something. No, that's preposterous. When we know that's exactly what electrons do.
That, you know, it's related to waves. Now...
So again, he just insists. He says so. Pyrrho says so. He knows that it's a wave that causes the fact that light is a color separated by a prism. That different wavelengths of light, that is different frequencies. So let's just make sure we understand the frequency argument just has to do with how fast the light comes. And that if it's coming in a close distance or a large distance between the hits, that would have a difference on, say, an electron that it bumps into, and the electron would move further or less far based on that and be deflected more or less in terms of the angle that it readmits the photon at. And it does readmit it.
When you take a single slit diffraction pattern for a wave and put it on another one, the result is the add-up of the two of them.
So he says this is the add-up of the two of them, which it clearly isn't the add-up of the two of them. There's no, the single slit width that creates this pattern is much smaller or narrower than the pattern, the width slit that creates this internal pattern. So you can't use that as an argument. Now that's something that might be causing it is the distance of the impediment. So as you change the distance of this impediment, you might diminish the effects of this single slit pattern. So if you make the impediment large enough, like obviously in a diffraction grating, this is like the slits are very narrow in this example. Well, as you make the slits narrow, this starts to just turn into balls. Okay, so if I put narrow slits with narrow barriers between them, I just end up with little balls of light, and they'll be separated by a great deal of distance.
Problem is, since we've seen that the photons are particles in the sense that they create just one speck on the photographic paper at a time, one speck, you could turn your wave laser down so low that just one photon comes out every second. You just have one photon. So how would you see this effect of the overlap of two patterns when there's one particle going through one slit at a time?
It's not even an interesting phenomenon, okay? Quite obviously, if there's a mechanical reason, if there's a mechanical structure, all right, if the light is being diffracted based on it going through a field, the field is going to be the same field no matter how many photons are going through it. So I'm giving you the simple explanation here. Let's say when you bring two slits together, what happens? So when they're far apart, there's no charge between these two. The electrons are just lined up very close to these surfaces. Now as I bring these two things together, what's going to happen is charge is going to be set up, and that means these electrons are going to start seeking each other. Even though they're repulsive to each other, the force is going to move through them and be pushing them into each other. So the force, that is the proton force, or whatever you want to call it, the change in their charge potential. One's going to be electron light, and one's going to be electron heavy, because they're automatically, one side is going to end up have more protons, and one side is going to have less protons showing on its surface. And so what's going to happen is they're going to tend to redistribute. And so as like you see, when you put two charged plates together, the spark just barely, sometimes you get a blue glow because the electrons are starting to move into this field. And so that's the field that the photons are going through. So as you get the slits narrower and narrower, you're creating a stronger and stronger field between the two plates, and the electron, depending on where it goes through here, is going to be deflected at different angles. Not that complicated. And I mean the photon. And clearly that is going to exist no matter how slowly or how quickly you push them through that field. You're going to get the same result.
To see that pattern, the two slits have to be active at the same time. So that's the weird thing.
The two slits have to be active at the same time. So this is a rational conversation. The two slits have to be active at the same time.
There's just so much rhetoric. Besides, like Heisley pointed out, the theory is just like a Star Trek dilithium crystal.
Right. Well, again, so this, shall I just bring up Hofladay's bad arguments in this video to you, and I'll just associate you with every irrational, stupid, fucktarded thing Hofladay has said?
Flux capacitor language kind of guy seems to be good enough. Both of them evidently don't care about the math at all, because...
No, you don't care about the math. I'm the one that's going out and investigated the math. So you go ahead and show me the math, okay? I'm showing you that every freaking person I've seen do the math, Khan Academy, this guy, every single person I've seen do the math does math for this. This isn't the two-slit pattern. You think this is the two-slit pattern? Well, it's not. So you show me the math, asshole. Fuckhead. Jerk.
They're not the same pattern. I mean, it's wave mechanics, just adding up wave crests over time that says what the pattern will be in both cases.
And exactly, it doesn't match what it should be, which is the pattern should look like sine waves. So let's again go back to the actual photograph. I don't know if I can make this bigger. Yeah, it's a little bigger. And the truth is, it looks like, well, this is kind of blobby actually, but there's no clear middle is much brighter, and then it gradually goes down to exactly nothing. So there's no evidence of a sine wave. Like these aren't like a bunch of, like a radio frequency where you have, it gets brighter and brighter, and then it gets dimmer and dimmer, and then it gets brighter and brighter, and then it gets dimmer and dimmer. But, if I show you a better pattern of it, you've seen the bar pattern. I'm sure you've seen one that has these very sharp bars. Doesn't look anything like a sine wave. Nothing like it at all.
So the similarities, because the two waves are working together to create the final pattern.
The two waves are working together. So again, they're not working together. And what I'm saying is creating the pattern in the two slit. The reason why both are being blended here is because they're being blended in this charge field. There's actually two charges here. There's this plate, and then there's these two independent plates. So there's actually, that's where the blending of the field is happening, is that the thickness of this impediment is going to dictate the strength of this charge. Because it's going to force these things to become more and more neutralized in their charge. As you bring this, as you make this single impediment smaller, you reduce the electrical potential.
The thing is, you need two waves. If one particle was one little wave...
Yeah, the thing is, you need two waves, right? And there aren't two waves. There aren't two waves in the single slit experiment, and you contrive them. And in this double slit experiment, there's no way to make two waves except to make the photon split in two. And it doesn't goddamn do that, you silly people.
Part of this is the thing, too, with Gary's, like, he can't answer any even lightly challenging questions, really. But
okay, yes. My challenging question to you is how the fuck do you have so much goddamn motherfucking arrogance to say something silly like that when you produce nothing? You don't produce a link. You don't produce a video. Nothing. Go find the example of it done right on the internet somewhere. Go find me the physicist doing the math correctly. Point me to the video and then say, there, debunk this. Go show me it done right, because all I can do is find examples of it done wrong, and grotesquely wrong. All I find is Dr. Quantum wannabes. All I find is variations of Dr. Quantum pseudoscience. So you're the one who doesn't put up, shithead.
why the fuck does he even think that light is a particle to begin with?
Why the fuck does he even think that? Well, because it sort of makes sense that little bits of energy, they have energy, they affect things, they cause electricity to move in metals. They're obviously bits of something, in my opinion. Yes, little things flying off of the sun in a straight line. A straight line force.
In our macroscopic experience, it reacts. Hey, I'm trying to get this.
Alright, from our macroscopic experience, so what does that even mean? You've seen photons in a microscope and they wave, huh?
It reacts like a wave. You know.
And your example, your evidence is where? Where's your evidence of that? Where's your macroscopic evidence that it reacts like a wave? Where is it? Where? Besides this, you asshole. This is how they came up with this wave crap, you jerk.
It ripples out, and
It ripples out. No, it doesn't. It comes out in a straight line in equal distance, just like gravity. Okay, just like magnetism. All right. There's rays coming out proportionally, and they diverge as they go further away. That's what light is. Retard.
The color phenomena of wavelength and God.
Oh, the color phenomena of wavelength, which doesn't exist in a photon. Let's remember, photons have individual. They don't get separated by a prism. Okay. What do I want to say? Yeah, and wavelength again is just the frequency. All right. So how close together the bits are. It's not that complicated. The distance between the bits. Frequency. You don't need a wave to have frequency. I mean, I can keep pointing out simple examples. I can fire a gun. I can fire bullets every 10 seconds. I can fire bullets every 30 seconds. That's a different frequency. No one's saying I'm shooting waves at people. I'm shooting bullets at people with a frequency.
He knows what he thinks frequency of light is if it's not wavelength. Well, that's what that means.
Says you again. That's what that means. So every time there's a frequency, there's automatically a sine wave. There's no such thing as a thing moving. That can't happen anywhere in the universe. Bullets are waves.
So that's weird.
Cannonballs are waves.
So
rocket ships going to the moon is a wave.
You're still muted, but you have control of your own microphone. You are on dock. Okay, it's funny. It doesn't show over there. Are we supposed to just show over there? Why does it not show over there?
I didn't listen to this part, so technical problems, I guess.
I see it. Other people must be the way other people capture it, maybe.
Fuck you. Alright, we'll jump. He's obviously distracted by his own incompetence.
What I did was I segued from people that believe that there's writing on that paper behind Trump into people that believe whatever their scientific fantasies are. And then
he's on
Rose
Trump.
and by any other name, it's similar enough.
I don't understand why they say it looks the same. It doesn't look the same.
I know. Like, other than there's a banding, right? It's a banding. But then that's another thing that took me a long time to figure out is Gary, when he says it's an on-off pattern, he literally means that. He doesn't think it's like this. We're looking at it from the side, of course, that it goes up and down. It's gray to white to black to gray to white to black, He literally take this on off, which again is so qualitative.
Right. Okay. So again, I can show you. Let's go look at double slits images from YouTube. Okay, from Google. Let's go find some, right? And we'll see if we can find some patterns here, and he can show me how it's all wavy, except when it's done badly. That's electrons. I mean, electrons are always going to be sloppier because electrons really don't like to be told where to go. This is the worst part of it, right? There's porn in here. Yeah. But now there's that might be a simulation. It almost looks too good. Oh, here's a good one here. Let's see what this one looks like. Alright. Well, that's the same one as I just had, so yeah, let's see if we can find a better one here. Look, this one looks pretty blocky. Those look like pretty square edges to me. Let's see. So this is an example of how it spreads out as you get really, as you narrow the slit, everything blobs. And as you widen the slit, you get more and more features. So here's the widening and narrowing of the slit. So here's a very narrow slit. It's wider here and then wider here. So here's the widest slit. Then this is a little narrower. This is more narrow. And this is the more narrow. So that's sort of pointing out the argument here. So he argues for what this pattern looks like, and obviously the pattern can look quite different depending on how wide the slit is. So, you know, this jargon that he knows what it looks like. Apparently he doesn't. Apparently he hasn't done any research. These are quite distinct bar-like things here. Bars here. Like I said, the better your laser, the more bar-y the thing goddamn gets. You use the nice green laser, you're going to get nice, sharp bars. Alright, so back to the fun.
What is his...
I mean, this cunt, okay, well, he steals a celebrity image because he's too ballless to man up and actually make an honest video or something, or show his fucking cunt face. But he's trash talking. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know the Theora guy. He's just going to talk out of his ass, okay, and that's it. He does zero research, just talks out of his ass. You know, and then if you really do ever confront him in a conversation, he's just a naysayer and a nitpicker. He'll agree to absolutely nothing ever. He'll concede nothing ever without putting a but or never mind or I don't want to be bothered. He's the biggest sack of useless shit. No wonder why he hangs out with Pyrrho. He's a useless troll.
Hypothesis of what's going on there. I mean, why is it producing that pattern? Why doesn't it just show up as what you would see if you were shooting balls through a hole, you know, and hitting on a screen? Why doesn't it show up that way?
Well, he's...
Yeah, well, I've already explained why. Is because matter's complicated. Matter isn't like, oh, here's the surface of the matter, and that's where the matter stops. There's nothing, there's no complex nuclear bits at all. There's no forces that leak past the boundary of the last electron. There's no electrons on the surface of matter. There's no such thing as static electricity. Has anybody ever heard of something as silly as that? Like, you might walk on a carpet and your whole body will get covered with electrons, and then you'll touch a doorknob and a spark will fly across it. That would be the silliest thing ever, right? That could never happen on planet Earth, could it? Not in your wildest imagination could there ever be forces connected with matter. That would be insane, right? Jackass, shit talker.
Made an end run around that issue by pointing out that so he...
Fake little karate guy.
Okay, so the thing is, when you have two diffraction patterns of waves and they overlap, they are indeed, you know...
Two diffraction patterns and they overlap. Of two diffraction patterns of waves that overlap. Now, Hothliday, you don't think that's just complete gobbledygook, right? I mean, that is nonsensical shit. That's a complete bibbly-babble, like it has absolutely no technical relevance and doesn't describe anything real, right? I mean, to talk about diffraction and interference in exactly the same time would be completely fucktarded, correct?
So the result is the result of overlapping those two patterns, right? So the only reason it's weird in the two-slit is you do it with a laser. You turn the laser down way low. So just
Okay, nobody does this. There's no such thing as turning the laser down way low. This is not how the experiment's ever done. They put a filter. Okay, he doesn't even understand how the single photon experiment was done. The single photon experiment was done because a French guy put a light source behind a heavily blocked sheet of glass covered with soot or something. Okay, and he left it alone for a month. He went away for a month. So he let a little bit of light, that a single photon every now and then would slip through some tiny, tiny little spot that wasn't covered by the soot. So every now and then a photon would actually make it to the slits and actually go through. So there was no turning down any lasers or any of this kind of bullshit. Jackass.
one photon comes out every second, or half second or whatever, and you still see the double pattern. But if there's a particle, which you have every reason to think, because if it's photographic paper, one speck appears on the paper at a time. Hard to see with paper, but when they have, with CCDs, you actually can see one photon hitting it at a time, and it fills in. So it's like you have a pattern that makes sense for waves.
So again, he's saying a single wave goes through the single slit and creates a pattern. So now we're back to defending Huygens, which is silly nonsense, where I don't have to do any of that. I simply say, hey, you want to figure out where it's going to go, you just figure out the fact that there's a field in here, and the photon, every photon has a chance of hitting an electron. And an electron that's in a certain position. And whatever position the electron's in is going to dictate whether it deflects 20 degrees or 40 degrees or 60 degrees.
Now, the weird thing about this pattern in terms of, truly weirdness, well, there's maybe two things. One is, why would you even see it with the particle? And with the particle, this width of the slits...
Why would you even see it? Again, how many times can you say the same shit over and over again? But electrons are what emits photons. It's kind of common knowledge. A photon hits an electron, the electron moves, okay, but the electron's acceleration is lost. And when it decelerates, when the electron decelerates, and in a field, the electron doesn't move straight. So the electron's in a different position and emits the photon at a different angle. How many fucking times have I done this? I've done this many times in my videos. I've pointed this phenomenon true. Okay, I can show you Feynman diagrams describing that very phenomenon, you motherfucking cunt. Alright, that's how, asshole. I haven't left the question unanswered. I've answered the fucking question. And my answer actually explains how many bars there are here is probably dependent on exactly that charge field. That, if they're too far apart, there won't be any charge field. If they're just the right distance, you'll have the maximum charge field, which means you'll have the most lines. And as you start cramming them together, you start pushing all the electrons out, and therefore you have less of a pattern.
Like if you're shooting electrons through, you're not going to notice the diffraction lines, because it's going to go down to zero, like right away. But you do notice the interference, because you can kind of provoke that better. So that's kind of weird. But the weird part is, like, there's...
So that made sense to somebody. Not. The problem with electrons is they aren't as precise. So electrons make a much blurrier pattern.
Crystals where if...
electrons are, by my theory, okay, the explanation is electrons going through are hitting electrons. And the electron, well, they're not actually hitting them, right? When an electron gets close to another electron, it basically transfers its energy to the other electron. And so the other electron is the one going to the target. And it's obviously not going in a straight line, because electrons they travel in the field they're in. They're moved by field energy. That's why they use an electron gun has magnetism around it. It's because the electrons are affected by the magnetism.
You can tell when a photon goes through it. And
I think you're straying away from what I was asking.
Anyway, yeah. And also I was trying to do high level. So the main thing there is I don't...
High level.
Why they both are saying there is no difference between the 1 and 2 slit.
Again, it's not that there's no difference. It's the same phenomenon. How the fuck can you keep saying there's some sort of dramatic difference? It's an interference pattern in both cases. And in both cases, it's the same as fucking Newton's rings, for fuck's sake. Let's do it again. There. Look at the rings. You see the rings? Yeah, that's what it is. It's Newton's rings, idiot.
Doesn't make sense. Of course, there's a difference.
What's the hypothesis, though, of why?
Well, Gary's just working back from he doesn't like the things he saw in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know that.
Oh, I know that. Yeah, I know everything about everything. I haven't watched a single video, but I know that. Fuck you.
So he's trying to defy that, but he hasn't really. I don't think he's actually thought it through. Forget the hard science part, but just this part.
Oh, yeah, right. No, I'm the one that's done all the research, right? I've spent all the time watching all of the two-slit experiments, watching the mathematics, watching all these people do it inaccurately. And you're the one who just keeps lying for your religion. I'm the one who has shown you the videotape of the Pope sucking a 5-year-old's dick, and you just keep defending the fucking Pope. I've shown you the Feynman, for fuck's sake, lecture where he sits there and draws these stupid blobs. Look, if a single slit is just a blob. Is this just a blob? You asshole. You lying cunt. You're the one that hasn't done the work. I'm the one who has, asshole.
Well, I remember I was talking to Nummy Num about this.
Yeah, well, Nummy Num's a truther kook.
You know, and he totally accepts, I think, at least most of what Eminem says about this subject. And he was saying that this has something to do with the material and how the atoms caused some sort of, I guess, deflection, angles of...
No, it's forces, idiot. All right? You ever heard of electricity and magnetism? Have you ever heard of static electricity?
How the particles...
Well, his current idea is that it's something like a magnetic field line. You can imagine, the iron shaving lines of a magnet kind of thing. That he's saying that somehow the electrons or whatever the particle gets slotted in to the...
It's an electron. It's a monopole, okay? So, yeah, it doesn't line up like iron filings, which are dipoles, right? So, yes, electrons are still pressure sensitive, though. Electrons don't like electrons. So even if a bunch of electrons want to go somewhere, they can't get there because they don't like each other. They always have to be a certain distance from each other, jackass.
And those things shoot out, and that's the diffraction pattern. Right.
No, photons hit the electrons, or the electrons hit the electrons, and then the electrons move on to the target. The photon in the photon case. The electron readmits the photon.
So it has nothing to do with wave interference. It has to do with, like, BBs going on a groove surface and ended up locked into one of those.
What creates that?
Not a groove surface, so that's again a perversion of it. I mean, it's a Feynman diagram. It's quantum electrodynamics. It's the most common interaction in the universe is a photon hitting an electron. It's the most common interaction in the fucking universe. All right, and it has rules. And Feynman knows those rules. All the fucking physicists know those rules. And those rules are that the trajectory of the electron will be changed when it's hit by a fucking photon. You fucking idiot. And that electrons emit EMF, which are basically photons, idiot. And then when they stop moving, when they decelerate, they emit photons, asshole. And that's what rainbows are made of. And yes, that's what prisms do. And that's how light bends in water. All of that shit is being decided because electrons don't move in straight lines when they're locked in a field, you stupid cunt.
Field? I'm confused.
Yeah, well, he does, so is he.
God, I'm so gonna bury you. I'm so gonna be so fucking pleased to point out just what a troll you are, Pyrrho. A fucking goddamn troll. You're wrong. You're unqualified. You're obnoxious. You're a stinking, skanky piece of fucking shit.
So he doesn't have an explanation.
Yeah, go ahead, laugh, asshole, because I'm going to have the last fucking laugh on your fucking goddamn pissed-on grave.
For what creates the field?
He does. he's got these tons, and tons are flying around, and there's a certain amount of tons, and the particles like a whole bunch of tons swirling around each other.
Yeah, static electricity. No one's heard of that. Magnetism. No one's heard of that. The fucking energy that bonds atoms together. The very forces that are holding atoms together. That couldn't possibly be leaking out of matter. That's impossible.
Okay, I don't understand that.
But the real thing, and then the issue between those bullet points is really, why does the nummy-nums believe it? Right? I get some guy saying, I'm going to spend my time.
Because he's about 500 times smarter than you arrogant cunt, and he actually has read documents, like he actually read the Edinburgh guy's diary, who did the famous Einstein's right experiment, and he actually read that shit. Unlike liars like you who just talk about what somebody said to somebody else. He said to him said, and he said, and then he said to she said. You don't fucking goddamn do any real research, you stupid ignorant cunt. And he actually does, you stupid cunt.
Thinking about the wonders of the universe. I'm going to look at the stars and imagine what it'd be like to travel up there. And then I write a story or a theory about what it's like, because I got basically a vision. It was my emotions, my endorphins shot off. I like the idea. Of course, I see why people go down those roads. I wish they'd learn the skills to question themselves better.
Yeah, what the fuck? This is just so fucking idiotic. You're the fucking biggest unicorn chaser on fucking YouTube, you fucking cunt. Your whole theory, you're the one sitting there trying to rationalize and defend some kind of fucking bullshit little fantasy you had when you were 5 years old, and it gave you a hard-on, and you can't let it go. Okay, your stupid fractally bullshit. Oh, it's waves all the way down forever and ever and ever, and there's 7 million universes all tied on top of each other, and they all have a pyrrho in them. An obnoxious cunt. It's probably enough. I'm probably at 40-something minutes, right, or some kind of bullshit like that. So it's just probably more of the same bullshit. Pyrrho just obnoxiously declares what the truth is, even though he has no evidence, and any evidence, anything he could produce, I could rip I could rip it a new asshole. But he doesn't produce any evidence. Anytime he ever shows anything, it's crap like this. It's completely debunkable. There's no math going with this at all. It's just hey, look, this is how it looks. We can't explain that. Yeah, fuck that part. Let's just do that simple pattern. That's the one the math works for. Yeah, fuck you, you cunt. You ignorant motherfucking foul-mouthed slandering shit for brain. God. Religious fucks.